Good evening, and welcome to the third installment of Theta Talk Thursdays. My name is Jim Gaffney. I am the Executive Director of the Theta Talk Professional Engineering Fraternity, and I'm so glad that you're joining us tonight for our program on building your network. Our speaker today is Adrian Arndt, our National Volunteer Director, who is an initiate of the Tau Gamma chapter. Tonight we'll have about 45 minutes of program, followed by 15 minutes, or really however much time we need for questions. So without further ado, I'll bring Adrian on so that we can get our program started.
Good evening, everybody. Well, I'm very excited to be here with everyone this evening. Today, we're really going to focus on part one of this two-part series on networks and mentoring, and today's really focused on why having a great network matters. So I know that term like networking, particularly for engineers, if our target audience here is anything like I was when I was in college or, shortly out of college, the term networking, I never really had, let's say, positive associations with that word. But that's not really what we're here to talk about tonight, networking. We're really more talking about mentoring and then, what having a network, and really what I mean by that word is, your friends, your colleagues, your family, your brothers, etc. All of those sort of people that are in your network, and how to really make the most of them. And I'm just going to kind of share some stories from my personal network of folks that have helped me both in sort of the positive situations. I've listed a few here, whether you're looking for a new job or maybe a first job, maybe you're looking at moving across the country or learning a new skill or career path, as well as some of the kind of more challenging situations that I've been through, times when I felt, stuck or undervalued at work, unsure of how to approach, a discussion around raises or promotions or something like that at work, or when you're not getting the feedback or sort of that positive reinforcement that you need to kind of grow in your career at your current position. So we'll kind of talk through some personal stories I have that kind of hit on a lot of those today, and then we'll move into questions at the very end. So again, just kind of what we're going to cover this evening. I'll tell you a little bit more about who I am. I'll tell you about my network, where they are, what kind of positions and careers they have. I'll share some personal stories. I'll give you a little teaser about what you can expect next week, and then we'll wrap up with questions. So who am I? My name's Adrian Arndt, as Jim mentioned in the intro. I'll kind of go through a little bit of my professional and then fraternity experience as well. So I graduated from Tau Gamma chapter, University of Pennsylvania, got a degree in mechanical engineering in 2011. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated, but luckily I was able to find a job relatively quickly as an industrial engineer. I did that up in the Princeton, New Jersey area. Around that same time, I actually started volunteering as the Atlantic Regional Director. Did that for about 4 years, had so much fun. I actually got way more enjoyment and excitement kind of in that role than I really did kind of at my job when I was at Shiseido. And that was some of the signs that it was probably time to start looking for something new to do. So in 2014, I was lucky enough to move back home to my hometown of Philadelphia. Was able to get a job as a sales operations consultant with a little company called Optimize. They do mostly software and data and analytics. And then in 2017, I volunteered as a facilitator at the Leadership Academy that summer. And then 2018 was kind of a big year for me. There's a bunch of, numbers for that year kind of on here for a reason. As it kind of states in there, I was a breakout speaker at convention that year. I also started in my current position as a volunteer director that year. I do have to do a little bit of a shameless plug. If anyone out there's watching this and they're interested in volunteering with the fraternity on a national level, please feel free to reach out to me, volunteer@thetatau.org. Would love to talk to you more about that. Had to slide that one in there. And then after about a year and a half job search process, I found this company, Credera, which is where I currently work, and started working there as a senior consultant in data and analytics. I've got a picture there of me with my parents. I was actually at my going away party after about 29 years in the Philadelphia area. Took my talents down to Dallas, which is where I currently live. So I just wanted to have a little, personal touch there to kind of explain what my professional journey has sort of been like so far. So as some of you may recognize as you're sort of looking at this slide, I put on my data analyst hat and threw some of the data and different things about my network into Tableau to kind of create this little visual map here. I'm always curious about, where is my network? Where are they concentrated? What cities? Anytime I go on a trip somewhere, I'm always thinking about who do I know there to reach out to them. And this has sort of been a cool tool for me to make sure that anytime I travel somewhere, I'm catching up with somebody. So if you have access to anything like this, it doesn't have to be this fancy. Can't recommend enough just sort of plugging some of your data in from LinkedIn. Just, get a feel for where you maybe have people that might surprise you. I've got a lot of big bubbles on this map at, Dallas, obviously, Philadelphia, New York. But I was actually surprised when I was going through this process. There's some pretty big bubbles in kind of the San Francisco area, Austin, Boston, Seattle. So, it's just kind of shows you that you maybe know more people in more places than you might, that might come to your mind immediately. And so I think this is a really good exercise for everybody out there who's kind of thinking, what does my network even look like? How many people do I know in, X city? And this really helped me when I was thinking about relocating from Philadelphia to Dallas. I knew a few folks, particularly through Theta Tau, that lived in the Dallas area and Austin and some of the other places in Texas. And that really gave me a lot of confidence to believe like, oh, I can do this move that's across the country. And, I'll know a few people and that'll kind of help me get started and make some friends and everything. The other thing I wanted to throw out that's on the right side there. So I did sort of a word cloud of what are all the positions of the folks in my network. And the reason I kind of put that together is if I'm ever thinking about a career change, or maybe I'm just curious about what a human resources manager actually does, I know a few people in my network that I can go talk to and kind of get that firsthand account of, hey, what does this title like really mean? What do you do in your day-to-day job? So if I ever am thinking about that career change, if you're out there thinking through, I don't really know what a software development engineer does, but it sounds cool, like think about who's in your network that maybe has that title and reach out to them and kind of get that firsthand account. So one of the first stories that I wanted to talk about here, as I mentioned before, I've got kind of a number of personal stories I wanted to share with this audience tonight. The first one I wanted to hone in on is my friend Michelle. She's standing right next to my dad in this picture here. This was actually from my 29th birthday. A bunch of us went out to have some charcuterie sampling. But Michelle's been a long-term mentor and friend of mine. I've known her over 14 years. She actually graduated from college the year I was born. So I like to kind of half-jokingly refer to her as my life coach. I have a million stories I could tell about her. But the two that I really wanted to kind of focus in on for the purposes of this audience, I've got some bullets up there kind of about that. But really the first story about Michelle that I thought would be really good for today's content. For those of you who've had, some work experience and you've been in your job for a little while and you've potentially heard some things that may sound a little, crazy the first time you hear them. And I think especially as someone early in your career, you can wonder, does this sound weird just because I don't know, because I'm new in this job or in my career? Or, is this really something that's, more of a red flag about this company overall? So it's really important to find somebody. And I kind of stress, finding someone who's not at your current employer, somebody who's older than you, who kind of has more experience than you do, to sort of gut check whenever you hear some of these things. And the example I'll kind of give here is several years ago, I was going into a review cycle, and I was convinced I was going to get promoted. I'd heard all this, great feedback kind of in the lead up to the review, and went into it. And my manager, I didn't get the promotion that I was expecting. I didn't get a lot of feedback as to why. I was expecting, you're 80% of the way there, or whatever it is. And if you do this 20%, you'll get there. And that really wasn't the way the conversation went, which was hard for me. And really the only thing that I heard coming out of that meeting was perception matters more than reality here. And that was really hard for me to hear. It was something that I didn't really understand. When you're hearing something like that from a leader at your company, it definitely, made me feel like my contributions weren't being valued and my work wasn't being valued. And So luckily, I was meeting up with Michelle a few days after that, and I kind of told her the whole story, and she, kind of provided her wisdom and just her, wealth of experience that she's had in her 30 plus years in work. And that situation in particular, she was able to kind of tell me, hey, your instincts on this were right. That is something that's a bit of a red flag to hear, especially from someone so high up at your company. But there have been other times where I brought stuff to her and she's kind of said like, hey, that's sort of the way it goes. You hear stuff like that at work and, you may not like it or it may be contrary to what you think. And, I just sort of tell that story so that people know, find these people that you can have those conversations with, because that'll just really help you in your career as you move forward. One of the other stories that I wanted to tell, and I kind of mentioned it here about allowing relationships with these people to kind of evolve and grow over time. So up until a couple of years ago, the relationship that Michelle and I have had has been very career focused. I'd go to her as someone who's, 20 years older than me, hey, like, how do I handle this situation? Or, hey, I got this feedback and what should I do about it? And very, very sort of work career oriented conversations. And her conversations with me were, oh, we got these millennials at work and here's what they think. Is this, representative of your generation or not? And of course, I'm happy to oblige with those conversations. But a couple years ago, she was going out to Seattle to interview with Microsoft and invited me to come with her. She was like, hey, I've got this, free place to stay and Seattle's a cool city. Do you want to come check it out? And I was a little nervous at first. I mean, we'd never traveled together. Our relationship really wasn't like a peer sort of relationship. It was very sort of mentor-mentee and, like I said, very career focused. And so I was a little nervous about the dynamic shifting a little bit in that way, but pushed some of that nervousness aside, said yes. We had a fantastic time. I love Seattle. You saw a couple of slides ago, I mentioned what my network looks like, and there's some dots out there. Most of those folks that I know in Seattle are due to that trip. So that was pretty cool that we got to do that and really have our relationship kind of evolve. Another story I want to tell is about my friend Julie. She's actually a brother in Theta Tau. I think she's potentially one of my only brothers that I've got kind of in this sequence, potentially for next week as well. But Julie's one of my oldest friends from college. We've known each other about 12 years. And the story that I kind of like to tell here, I hope this will land with this group. I think this group is roughly the right age range, but if not, bear with me for a minute here. But if you think back to, maybe your freshman, sophomore year of college, and you've got, kind of your group of college friends, and you're like, man, these people are great. And you kind of think back to being in high school and, oh, like those people were great too. We should just get everybody together and have like one big party with my high school and college friends. Everybody will get along. And then you do, and it like goes epically wrong. Like nobody gets along. They have nothing in common. And you're thinking to yourself, why did I think like different parts of my world would somehow, come together and gel? And the reason I'm kind of telling this story is, nobody has been in kind of different cross sections of my life more than Julie. She's been my roommate, my coworker, my friend. At one point in time, she was all of those things at once. And she's really kind of been the source of most of the people that I actually know. A lot of my good friends I can trace back to Julie. And so don't be afraid to sort of let, your coworkers and your like friends meet, or your college friends and your work friends meet, or your family and your friend. Like you can definitely let different parts of your worlds kind of overlap, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But don't be afraid of having kind of people cross mingle. I find that tends to lead to more, fruitful and kind of positive relationships. And also take note of those people. If you have someone like Julie kind of in your life that, hey, they take me to SWE events, they take me to the Theta Tau conventions, and a lot of people I know are kind of due to this person. Try to be aware of who those people are, and one, sort of thank them, but also just sort of think back to who as kind of a result of being friends with them. The other thing I'll say about kind of my relationship with Julie, and one of the things I've learned through that relationship, is sometimes there's these like big life events that come up that sort of change how that relationship with some of those people in your network might be. And kind of the example I'll use there is we were really good friends in college, and then we graduated, and Julie actually worked for about 4 years overseas. And I don't know if anyone's heard kind of that phrase that, some people are only meant to be in your life for a short period of time, or some people are only meant to be your college friends, or, whatever the case may be. And I kind of felt that way when she was gone, just because we didn't really talk much while she was working overseas. And, looking back now, it's kind of crazy because she came back and we sort of were friends again, and things just kind of fell into place, and we started working together, got an apartment together. And so, sometimes people will kind of come in and out of your life, and that's okay. I mean, big life events happen, right? Just kind of be aware when they do, be honest about, what you need in that relationship for it to continue and to be a positive and healthy one moving forward. So I met Melissa while we were both volunteering to be facilitators at Leadership Academy, I mentioned in 2017. And we got to be fast friends. Melissa's one of my favorite people. I joke, she's who I want to be when I grow up. She's just been one of the best friends that I've made while being in the fraternity. And I didn't really know her that well at this point, but about a couple of months after we had leadership in 2017, I got a promotion at work. And, I'd had some promotions before, and they'd always felt like this big sort of exciting thing that, I've been working really hard for this as sort of a validation of my contributions and my hard work. And I was expecting this one to feel that way too, and it didn't. And one of the reasons why it didn't was my company sort of made me feel like the only reason I got the promotion was because I had been looking at other companies and I'd been looking at other opportunities. So I sort of felt like they sort of took away what was supposed to be this really exciting thing in my life and made it something that was, a little bit upsetting. So I mentioned here, don't be afraid to show your vulnerability. Again, I didn't know Melissa all that well, and definitely kind of be careful with who you kind of show the vulnerability to. You got to kind of know your audience sometimes. But again, Melissa was, at the time, I considered a pretty good friend. We had just kind of worked together with Leadership Academy, so I felt comfortable going to her. She was actually the first call that I made when I found out about this promotion, and I was feeling kind of upset about it. I wanted to turn it down. I was kind of very emotional about the whole situation, and I needed her to tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear in that moment. And I think, kind of that second bullet there is really about find people who will tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And she kind of gave me the big picture, you can't turn down a promotion. A year from now, you're not going to care, how or why or whatever it is, that you got it. What's important is that you get the promotion, you get more money, that opens up so many more doors for you in your career professionally. And just sort of hearing that from somebody that I respected and trusted was really what I needed in that moment. So find people who will tell you kind of the hard advice and the hard things that you need to do. And then finally, I want to highlight Jessica. So about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was working at Optimize, as I mentioned, kind of on my timeline slide. And I had this amazing mentor at my company. She was fantastic at giving feedback, at coaching. And I just felt like I was growing at this really rapid pace at work and kind of advancing and just really loved being at work and doing my job. And, for those of you who've had a similar experience, you have, these really great mentors at your current employer. That's fantastic. I know what that feels like. It's an amazing feeling. You can always have more mentors, though. Mentors aren't I got one, I'm good, I'm done. You can always have more. And I, kind of stress that because eventually she left, and it was pretty tough for me when she left. She was kind of my sort of buddy at work. And as I said, I was doing a lot of growing and learning from her. And I knew there was going to be nobody else really at the company that I'd be able to kind of get that exposure from. So luckily, not that long after she left, I met Jessica. Jessica actually worked at my client at the time. So sort of an indirect colleague. We didn't work for the same company, but she had access to what I was doing in a professional context pretty regularly. And kind of likewise, I had access to her in a professional context pretty regularly as well. And I really wanted to highlight her because we have drastically different professional strengths and career paths, and she's not what I want to be when I grow up in terms of like what I want my career to be and some of that sort of stuff. But she's amazing at developing people, at growing people, at coaching, and that's something that I've really, really tried to learn from her. And then I mentioned in here too that reciprocity, making sure that as sort of the younger or more junior person in the relationship, making sure that you're giving as good as you're getting. What I was able to kind of do for her, she was going through some rough transitions, and kind of her mentor at her company also left. So she was going through some similar things as I was, just being able to kind of listen, helping her with some of our technology aspects at my job at the time, and just making sure that I was sort of helping her whenever the opportunity presented itself. That has just made our relationship super strong. I don't work at Optimize anymore, and she and I are still friends. We were actually texting yesterday because I'm going to be home in a couple weeks, and we're trying to meet up then. So just really wanted to highlight that story of, having mentors at your current company is great. Definitely pursue that, but don't feel limited if you can't find somebody in your current job. There's plenty of other people out there that can teach you and that you can learn from. Alrighty, to kind of bring it all together here, I definitely want people to kind of think back to that slide I had with sort of the map and then the word cloud, and really kind of think about your own network and kind of reflect on, where are people that located? Are they all in your current city? Are they all in another city, in another state, another country? Where are the people that kind of geographically dispersed? Are they all in Theta Tau? Are they, across organizations? Are they across different companies? What is this sort of current picture of your network look like? And try to maybe map it out a little bit, and maybe that'll help shine some new insights and help you if you're going through a career transition, or if you're looking for a new job. That might be a place to start. Also, whenever you meet new people, again, just try to be open-minded. Be mindful that I can probably learn something from this person, even if I don't really know anything about them, right? And just kind of having that approach anytime you meet somebody new, that's opened a lot of doors for me. So definitely kind of keep that in mind as you're meeting new people. And then, as I mentioned on the previous slide, definitely practice like being a good partner in the relationships that you have, especially if you're the more junior member kind of in your relationship. Look for ways to be a good listener. Look for ways whenever your, mentors or other folks in your network ask for help, even if it's indirectly, they notice when you try to help them, and when you, listen, and whenever you, are being a good partner, that really means something, and that really matters to them. And that's really helped me in a lot of my relationships as well. Lastly, shameless plug for next week. Please tune in, same time, 9 p.m. We're going to focus a little bit more on the nuts and bolts of, okay, I understand having a great network is a good thing, but how do I actually build that? How do I have some of those initial conversations with people? And then how do I continue to reinvest in those conversations and make sure that, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, those relationships are still just as strong, if not stronger. So that's what we'll cover next week. And that's actually the end of what I had prepared. So I guess we can jump into questions now. Okay, so first question I see here, how do you as the mentee work to build a relationship with the mentor? That's a great question. I don't want to go too far into that one just because I feel like part of that's going to get covered next week. As I kind of mentioned already, being a good listener is always a good place to start. One thing you'll know, again, being a little bit more of the junior person in some of those relationships, your mentor won't automatically kind of come out and ask for help the way you might as the mentee. So it's a little more subtle. But the more you can kind of listen and hear, they might be struggling with something, or, they might express some frustration about something. I think the better you get at kind of picking up on some of that stuff. If you can find a way to help them, or even just sort of validate like, hey, I understand, you mentioned this thing and it's a problem, and, is there anything I can do to help? Sometimes that's all it takes. But we'll cover that a little bit more, I think, in next week's content. Oh, from Daniel White. What qualities do your mentors have in common? Oh man, they're all so different. That's a really good question though. They're all really good listeners, I would say. I typically don't talk a lot, especially in big groups, but whenever I'm one-on-one situations, it's hard to get me to shut up, honestly. And I think a lot of them are just really good listeners. They're really patient. As I mentioned with kind of the Melissa example, they're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong or if I'm like thinking the wrong way about a situation. Which is definitely something I need as sort of that gut check and sort of that, tough love, if you will. I think that's a really important quality to be honest with people, whether it's your mentor or your mentee. Explain when something's working and when it's not working. I think those are some of the really common attributes I've seen. Did you do any professional development regularly to build your networking skills? No, I kind of led off with this. The whole the concept of networking is so not, again, I'm super introverted. That's really not my thing, being around a ton of people. I guess maybe if you think about that a slightly different way of networking as having one-on-one conversations with people, maybe that's a little bit of a different situation. Again, I'm so much better and I prefer one-on-one situations. So one of the things I do, and this is a little bit of a spoiler alert for next week, but whenever I go anywhere, whether it's going home, which I'm doing in 2 weeks, or going on a trip, which unfortunately there's not a lot of that now, I always look to see who do I know, where I'm going, and how can I further develop this relationship with this person? Can we do something new, or can we do something that's familiar because I haven't seen them in forever, and we just want to catch up in kind of a familiar setting. So as far as structured professional networking, I would say that's so not my thing. I know it works for some people. I'm more of a, let's get together one-on-one. Let's go out for food. Let's talk, let me hear what's going on with you. How can I help you? And, maybe I'll tell you what's going on with me and maybe you can help me as well. How do you differentiate between someone who is in your network and just some other friend or brother, and how might you act differently with them? So I actually don't necessarily differentiate. I would say if you know someone or if you're, connected to someone in some way because they're a friend, because they're a brother, they're in your network. Obviously, there are some degrees to which you want to approach your relationships. Whenever I think about going home in particular, now that going home is much more of an event than it used to be. It used to just be a quick little 20-minute train ride from Philadelphia. Now it's a much longer plane ride. You have to be conscious with your time. Obviously, it's harder to see everybody that you know in a given city or in a at a convention or something like that. And you have to be a little bit choosy about who you want to see. That doesn't mean you should only see people that you're really close with or that you've met before. You definitely want to think through, okay, there might be some new people that I can meet in this situation. And again, that was one of the reasons I kind of highlighted, I think, the Melissa story, because, I knew a few people that were in that training process to be facilitators at Leadership Academy, but there were several people that I didn't know. Keep yourself open to meeting new people. But obviously you want to focus your time on, I think, the people that kind of bring the most joy to your life and the people that you miss the most. And, not to be too OCD, but I do have some Excel spreadsheets that I've used as far as how to keep track of who I've seen lately and who I maybe haven't seen for a little while, or who's going to be at this event that I really want to talk to because it's either been a while or they're brand new. And so, if you're of that mindset and want to know more, maybe that's an offline conversation. And I'd be happy to, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to have that conversation a little more over there. How do you keep your network intact? How often do you keep in touch with those in your network? Man, a lot of these questions I feel like are teasers for next week. All right, how do I answer this without giving away too much of the goods for next week? I think a lot of it has to do with prioritizing. Kind of the story I'll tell a little bit has to do with when I went home for Christmas last year. It was kind of the first time that I had been away from my family, from my friends for over 6 months at that point. And I made up a list of people that I wanted to see for the 2 weeks that I was going to be home. It was about 21 people, 6 of which are my immediate family, but still, that was 15 people that I wanted to see in 2 weeks, while still making sure my family didn't feel like I was just in and out of there. You know, I wanted to make sure they kind of got some quality time as well. And so, you know, I had my like sheet of, you know, when I had brunch and dinner and coffee and happy hours, and you know, you just sort of make it work and you have to prioritize. And I'm sure there were other people I could have seen when I was home, but you can't always see everybody on every trip and with every, you know, convention, and there's always going to be more people. And that's why, you know, I kind of think with the prevalence of video chatting and everything now, I mean, I actually managed to get 8 of my 10 best friends from high school. All of us got together to do Quiplash and some of those online games about a month ago. It was the first time that many of us have been together in a room in probably 10 years. So I think the prevalence of video conferencing has really helped too, to be honest.
All right, well, those are all the questions we have. Adrian, thank you so much for the information that you shared with us tonight. I think we're all very much looking forward to next week when we will do part 2 of this program. That's July 9th, 9 p.m., a week from tonight. So with that, thanks, Adrian. Thanks those of you who tuned in, and we will see you next week.